Okay, so on today's episode, we're going to discuss how to go from being fully tracked to having the dream, which is knowing how to have your cake and eat it, never tracking your food, or whatever the different levels that come with it. So we're going to start off by discussing the importance of tracking, then go into sort of the drawbacks of tracking, and then the levels, and then really how do we actually get to a solution where you're not tracking much of your food, or you have the choice or control over how much food you are tracking. So let's dive into the importance of tracking, just to sort of reset expectations. What is the importance of tracking intake?
So I think the importance of tracking intake is one of the most overlooked components when it comes to nutrition. I know everyone always talks about the hesitancy to track or the hesitancy to measure food and whatnot. But if you really want an accurate gauge of how much you are consuming, you are just going to have to go through a period of weighing, measuring everything that you consume, everything. Now, again, I don't think this has to be a lifelong thing that you do, but if you ever do want to get to that position of untracked eating and intuitive eating, tracking for an extended period of time is just a necessity. It has to be done. It's like saying, I want to graduate with a medical degree, but not actually go to university. So I think learning how to track, learning the importance of nutrition, learning about calories, protein, carbohydrates, fat, fiber, all this stuff, I think is a very, very important part of the overall process, especially when it comes to altering your body composition over the long term, over the short term. And it is just, it's a huge necessity. I don't think there's any way around it, especially if you want to get into the best condition that you possibly can.
So what about when you hear things like, if anyone's talking about calories, just don't listen to them. You only focus on like whole foods or real foods or plants that have come from the ground or all that sort of stuff. What's the whole thing around like calories are evil? Because that seems to be a growing rhetoric in some of the mainstream podcasts that many people here may have listened to or come across on social media.
Yeah. I think it just comes down to a misunderstanding of what is actually going on. And when you look beneath the surface, I think the advice that a lot of these people may give is sound advice, right? If you're eating whole foods, predominantly plants, minimizing processed foods, if you have a look at the energy content of those foods, it's usually going to put you in a deficit without maybe even trying to, which is great, So this is where you'll see a lot of people be like, oh, well, I cut out all processed foods and I cut out all sugar and I started losing weight. Therefore, it's not calories in, calories out. It's just about the foods you eat. What they don't realize is that the foods that they cut out were actually very high in calories. And now if you swap those highly processed foods for more veg, more protein, et cetera, all over the course of the day, you're probably going to be eating less because those foods are a lot more satiating. So yes, you can get to a certain point by just following those principles and guidelines. I think that can actually work for a lot of people. If you just come off the couch, just come off eating whatever the hell you want for the last 30 years, following that advice can actually be very helpful in the short term. For if you do that for a couple of months, you're going to see some really, really good results. But it's not because of the fact that calories don't matter or they don't work. They always matter and they always fundamentally will. It's just how you go about it can vary dramatically, right? So, but to say that if anyone that tells you to count calories doesn't know what they're talking about, it's just like, that's just ridiculous. Calorie counting, and again, every experiment done when it comes to weight loss and fat loss and whatnot has proven multiple times that fundamentally everything does come down to calories in, calories out. I know that may be very hard for people to hear. They think they're a special snowflake, it doesn't apply to them, but it just does. Unfortunately, so instead of saying that, calorie tracking and macro tracking is bad, it's more like, no, it's just a tool that we can use to help you achieve a better result.
And do you think that is also the case when potential hormones are in the mix, when hormones are potentially are fluctuating for whatever reason? Can that impact the thermodynamics equation? Is it still applicable, or is there a hormonal based approach required?
No,
I'm asking these seeding questions. Like,
I know.
I said, if you go on like, if you look at what you said there around like these doctors or scientists will say, if you look deeper in it, they are saying the right thing, right? They are like espousing but obviously what the clickbait is, or what the stuff that probably our audience will see is absolutely opposite. It'll be
Yeah. Optimize your hormones, right? Yeah, all that stuff. So yeah, no, I'm sorry, but it doesn't matter doesn't matter how optimized your hormones are, you cannot escape calories in, calories out. If you look at any top bodybuilder, top competitor who's got into incredible shape, and I know this may not be you, right? But at the end of the day, we are looking to do what they do best, which is get into incredible shape, drop as much body fat as possible while keeping as much muscle mass around as possible, right? You look at the hormonal profile of any person who got to that level of conditioning, it's garbage if you're natural. It's absolute garbage. Okay. Now, the point I'm trying to prove here is that regardless of your hormonal levels or what they are by the end of like a fat loss phase or even during a fat loss phase, you simply cannot out hormone a calorie deficit, right? That's still always going to be the most important factor here. So thinking that you have to optimize your hormones first to lose body fat and to do this and do that is just foolish. You can optimize your hormones and still be gaining weight. You know, most of the time if you're coming out of that position, gaining weight is you optimizing your hormones, right? So yeah, this whole battle between hormones versus calories is just it's kayfabe. It's a fake fight. You know, it doesn't exist. It's people trying to sell something, trying to sell a certain protocol or a certain, hey, do eat this diet to boost your hormones. You don't have to worry about tracking calories. Just eat beef liver and do this and do that. And, you'll be this caveman from back in the day who could just lose fat so easily. Don't worry about tracking calories. Just eat beef and boost your testosterone, right? It's like, no, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Ed, what have you seen to be the drawbacks of tracking? Where does like the cons outweigh the pros?
I think where it potentially the cons could outweigh the pros if someone just isn't in mentally the right space to put that much emphasis on their nutrition. So if they are having some relationship with food issues, potentially like body image issues, then not even just the act of tracking, but the act of just putting so much focus onto nutrition may be detrimental, even if they are seeing positive physical changes from like a health perspective. The mental health impact of that just may not be kind of worth the trade-off on there. So I would kind of sum that up as people who are probably not in the right mental place to commit to dieting, or for it being a worthwhile trade-off in general. Although I don't think it's not worth the trade-off necessarily. I think a potential drawback or a potential thing that people struggle with when they do start tracking everything is then anxiety or kind of feeling uncomfortable when they're not able to track everything perfectly. And it can definitely go from a all or nothing kind of approach. And I think I've definitely been in that boat where trying to track everything so accurately. But if there was just one little piece that wasn't perfect, and I'm talking like the smallest, stupidest thing ever, then it's like, oh, well, day's gone. Get the Ben and Jerry's in, and then it's just a complete kind of 180 on that. So it's something that most people will go through, and so I don't think it's not worth tracking if you experience that, but it's probably something that you may experience initially when tracking, but it's something then to definitely be dealt with. So if you've got a coach, that's part of their job to help kind of guide through that and see that it's not an all or nothing, 100% or 0% kind of procedure, or if you are on your own, having to work through that in your own way. I think that's probably one of the bigger challenges. But again, I think that's just something that comes along with the educational process. Isn't a reason not to do it, more just something just to be aware of when you are doing it.
Anything Ed's missed, Ivan, from a different angle?
No, he nailed the key ones there. All I was thinking about was just with regards to that whole mentality of if I can't track it, then I may as well just go all out. That type of mentality where it's like if you're going out to like a wedding, you're going out to a social event, and you're like, well, the menu didn't have the calories on it, so I just got the triple cheeseburger and fries. It's like that type of mentality I think is a huge mistake. And just because you can't track something exactly like calories and macros and whatnot doesn't mean that you still can't make a good choice in that situation, right? So again, it's that all or nothing, black or white mentality, right? Where people just have to understand that just because, you can develop this. And I was the same as well. I had to know exactly the calories of wherever I went, otherwise I wouldn't eat it, or that type of crazy way of thinking. I think we all go through it, right? So that was definitely a huge mistake. But as with everything, when it comes to, I think, nutrition and training, there is this middle ground that you have to eventually find. But to find that middle ground, I think you just have to overshoot it to be able to come back down.
Yeah, it's like finding your sweet spot body weight. You have to go to the extreme first before you find it. Have you guys found, I don't know if you have this in Australia, Ivan, but have you found having calories on the menus in food in restaurants to be helpful or not?
Yeah, good question. I think that can be a decent guideline for people to use, but I think it's a double-edged sword, right? I don't think it's the thing. I think it's the perception of the thing, like how the person interprets that. So someone can go into that restaurant and be like, "Oh, that was really helpful. Thanks. I didn't know that that had like double the calories compared to this. I'm going to make a more informed choice," right? Or other people will look at that and go, "Oh my God, does that add up to my totals for the day?" Like doing this crazy math. And so I think and this all comes down to what we were saying earlier, but whether it's helpful or not is always going to come down to the individual. I think on the whole, I think it's a great thing, to be fair, to give estimates to start informing people, even though we know that these estimates are never going to be perfect. It's still going to be better than not knowing completely, So, but I think, it comes down to education. So for someone who's struggling with anxiety around seeing numbers and this and that, it's very similar to like the scale weight. I think if you're educated on how to interpret the number, I think it can be very, very helpful. But in my opinion, I think it's been a net positive. What about in the UK? Would you guys say it's been pretty good over there?
My opinion is great, I think. I think, as you said, it comes down to the perception, how you see it. But as long as you realize it's not 100% accurate, like you go to Nando's, the amount of marinade they put in your chicken is going to impact the amount of calories. So it's not going to be bang on to the calorie on every single one. So I think as long as you go with that kind of approach and you're not trying to nail the calories to the calorie. But I think from an educational perspective, if you can go on there and see, oh, actually, what I normally order, right, is nice, but whoa, that's like 2,000 calories. That's way more than what I thought it would be. Actually, I can have this thing, which I like almost just as much, and it's like half the calories. That might be well worth trade-off. Likewise, I think it can also go the other way. Like, just use Nando's because my restaurant frequenting isn't that massive, I'll be honest. But say you go in and you're always ordering the mashed potato because I don't want to get the chips because I want to be healthy, blah blah blah. You can then see that the mashed potato and the chips aren't really even that different, and then it's a bit like the first time you realize it's calories are not good foods or bad food. There can be like this liberating feeling of like, oh, wait a second, I can have a chocolate bar as long as it's within my calories. It's not going to make me fat the next day. In the same way, you can be like, here at Nando's, oh, like I can just have the chips. And actually it's not really any different to the mashed potato, at least on a calorie level. So it's like, I think from that side, it can also just be not only liberating for the people who have no education and are trying to just learn things, but also for like the over restrictive gym bros who are like, no, I've got to clean eat and all these things. You're like, oh, actually, like there's no reason I can't have chips if that's what I want.
Yeah, I think it's been a game changer. And also on the other way, there's some restaurants where Vietnamese food, we have a pho. Have you heard of PHO? And their food is so clean that you almost have to make sure you eat enough.
Yeah, I got like a ramen thing in there. It was it was virtually no calories, but it was so much liquid. I was so full. I was like, I'm basically just like dieting, but still feeling like bloated and just like
that place is a good place for dieting.
Sodium bomb.
Yeah. Sodium through the roof.
Yeah.
See, I think it can be really interesting. I remember when it first happened, people were getting quite triggered by it. Because they thought it could lead to like excessive or disordered eating. But I think if anything, it's really eye-opening. And similar to what Ed said around like the calories thing, that's been the biggest eye-opener for me. Like I was at, I think Rosa's Thai last week, and I was going to go for the pad Thai, but it said like it was like 1,500 calories. So that just feels like a lot to just bank away. Whereas I'd rather have the tofu cashew, which is 800. And it's just that scenario of like, I like them both equally, but that seems like a lot to eat just for a lunch. Because it's the same sort of volume, but the density is so much. So I think it's been really eye-opening. So what are the levels of tracking? We've discussed like the importance of it, the drawbacks of it, but what are the levels? Like how do you go from, if we were to sort of map the journey, you've got tracked on one end and you've got untracked on the other. But what are all the levels in between?
No. So should we start the most extreme or?
Yeah, go for it.
With the least extreme?
Yeah.
Go with the most extreme. Okay. So the most extreme is going to be pretty much tracking everything. So this includes all macronutrients, all calories, all vegetables, everything down to the letter and down to the gram. Now, the only time that we would really implement this level of accuracy is usually going to be potentially towards the end of a long diet, or like maybe the final 6 to 8 to even 10 weeks, depending on the individual. I think many people can probably go a long way on their fat loss journey just without having to track veg. Most people can, but I think the smaller you are, the less room for error, especially as you get closer and closer to checkpoint. Tracking veg, I think, just becomes a necessity. You have to, because it can be very easy to start just adding 500 grams of vegetables to each meal, which if you're on like 1,000 calories plus or minus 100, that can actually really add up and put you out of deficit quite easily. So yeah, I think tracking everything can be very, very helpful in those situations where you are coming towards the end of your process phase or your fat loss phase or what have you, and you're trying to get the best out of your physique. Okay, the best. Simple. There is no better way to do it. Tracking everything is always going to give you the best outcome, but you got to also take on the drawbacks with that as well, which is what we just discussed before. The next level down from that would be pretty much all but vegetables. So this is going to be your calories, it's going to be your protein, fats, and carbohydrates. Now, when we say tracking all these things, you just want to be tracking all of them to the best of your ability here, not really worrying about vegetables too much. We can add that in eventually if we are going to go quite extreme. Then after tracking calories, protein, fats, and carbs, the next level down would be just calories and protein. Fundamentally, when it comes to body composition stuff, as long as calories and protein are being tracked, the ratio between your fats and carbs just doesn't really matter too much. The only reason that we put it as a number 3 is because when you are dieting and when you are in a fat loss phase, you want to have minimal fluctuations from day to day, right? And if you're always altering your fat and carbohydrate ratios, that can just mess with the scale from a day-to-day perspective, which can throw off your readings, which can just make things a little bit more messy, So that's why, if we go to point number 2, when I say all but veg, you also want to make sure that your fat and carb intake is relatively consistent as well. Minor fluctuations here and there is fine, but just as long as it's consistent, that's what's going to really matter. And 3, just calories and protein. Just like I don't care about my macros. I don't care about fats and carbs. As long as I'm hitting a minimum of fats for health and whatnot, I don't care if my weight fluctuates from day to day. It's fine. Calories and protein are in check. Beautiful. And then from there, you could probably pretty much go to nothing. That sounds like quite a big jump. But this would be just, using intuitive eating, just maybe using some guidelines here and there, not weighing anything, not measuring anything, and living your life the way that you want.
Which step do you think is the hardest one to take of those levels?
Depends on the person. I think a lot of people actually struggle with the intuitive eating approach.
Is that going from calories and protein to 0?
Yeah. I think they get a little bit uncomfortable going from that, or even just going from tracking everything to just calories and protein. I think people can get really caught up with that. I think a lot of anxiety can come with that unless it's coached properly, right? So, I think it depends on the person. I think tracking everything for some people can be really, really easy because they love that. But I have to, no guesswork. It is what it is. This is exactly what I'm eating every single day. Boom, boom, boom. I'm going to hit my goal, whatever it is.
Are you tracking macros on that as well? Micronutrients
with everything?
Yeah.
No. This I think specifically we're just talking about fat loss here.
Yeah,
but yeah. But if you're tracking health and whatnot, that's something that we can talk about a little bit later on. But yeah, which one is the hardest?
Well, which one's the hardest been for you? Because I'm assuming you've tried them all. Which one have you found to be the easiest and the hardest?
No, I don't like nothing as well, to be honest. Even though I had the guide, if I was to go away for like a week or something, I know I'd be fine coming back, but I just like knowing exactly how much I'm consuming and whatnot. So for me, I can speak from experience. I would say nothing is the most hard. It's the hardest one for me, and everything is like the easiest for me.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
I'm just thinking here as Ivan was talking through it, and that there's one level of it is those different levels that Ivan's just talked through. But I think a massive element is also just how you implement each of these levels. And I think that can actually make a huge difference.
And when.
Yeah, because
when.
Say you implement, you're going with that strict as possible, everything kind of approach. If you do that with a set meal plan that you repeat each day, it's quite easy. On paper, you put a meal plan that covers everything, hits everything, and then you repeat. Now, you might get bored, so you might want to switch it up once a week or whatever you want to do. However, if you try that everything approach, but you wake up each morning and you try and either track as you go or you just try and make it up first thing in the morning. Logistically, for most people, it's just going to be a nightmare in terms of like, you don't have the right food in the house, potentially. You're going to have to you're doing like a small shop every morning as soon as you get up. You can't meal prep, you can't batch cook. So you're going to have quite a lot of free time for like doing this stuff. You're going to have to spend a lot of time on tracking apps, balancing everything each day. And like the same can kind of then be just said as you spread down. Because like, even if you go into the nothing approach, you can track nothing, but potentially plan your meals out in advance. You might know on a Wednesday I'm having bolognese for dinner, but not track it. Like that could still be an untracked set. Or the other way, I think most people think is you get to dinner time and you're like, what do I feel like eating right now? Like the ultimate intuitive thing. But it's like, in reality, like, are you just going to have everything in your cupboards all the time to prepare whatever? Like everything isn't an option all the time. You are limited by like these practical restraints. And so I think how you actually implement it plays a massive role in how easy these things are. Because I think like just tracking calories and protein on paper should be easier than tracking everything. But how you implement that, like if you track everything with a meal plan that you repeat every day, it's probably easier for most people than going as you go along, just tracking calories and protein. Because like we've probably all tried that whole thing of like using MyFitnessPal, track as you go along in the day. If you get to like 8 at night and you've just got this weird leftovers of like 30 grams of fat and 5 grams of protein, you're like, how the hell am I going to hit this now?
Drinking olive oil out of
drinking
spoons.
some olive oil and then like half a teaspoon of protein powder, just some weird stuff like that. So I think how you implement it plays almost a bigger role than the actual level of tracking that you do.
Yeah, people love the idea of no tracking, but tracking as you go is actually more anxiety producing. The MyFitness as you go, MyFitnessPal as you go was the thing that was what I did to try and get myself out of binge eating in 2014. But I think it made it even worse because I was living on that thing and I haven't used it since. That was the thing that I thought I'm done with MyFitnessPal. And I remember every single day on the way home on the way to the gym and on the way home from the gym, I used to be on MyFitnessPal, just sitting there trying to figure out what game I'm going to play with these foods to fit this in. And then at night, I'll be doing that same thing you just mentioned. I've got these weird sort of mix. And it was causing so much anxiety because all the time I was thinking, fuck, what do I eat next? What do I eat next? How am I going to fit this in? What creative? Then it's the whole thing, all right, I'll be walking around Sainsbury's or Tesco thinking, oh, what's this packaging? Then I have my MyFitnessPal app next to me, figuring out how I can fit this in. And that is just like, I think that's what causes eating disorders.
Yeah, I couldn't my nutrition, like in terms of like relationship with food's ever been. Not solely because of this, but definitely played a big part. And your food focus is through the roof. Like you said, you spend 30 minutes in Tesco's when you only need to be in there for 2 minutes. You end up just going in there almost like as a leisure activity, just to like browse different options. You figure out a meal you want. The rest of your day, you're pulling back to try and like account for it. Like the amount of time, actual physical time, but also just like mental, just energy that you're putting towards food. It's a very similar thing, I think, to when I was in that kind of bad place with food as well. I was watching loads of cooking shows. So it's like all you're doing is just like watching people. I've never really been into this, but some people watch like food stuff on Instagram or YouTube and stuff. But
Mukbang.
All of that stuff, I'm like all of that kind of stuff is just keeping food on your brain all of the time. And I think that's one of like the biggest, I think, I'm not saying this is right for everyone all the time, but like a massive positive of like say meal plans or something where it's more structured, where you're not having to make decisions all the time, is it removes that focus. Now for some people it's not appropriate and it actually does cause issues, but I think having that note, like so much, everything's on the table, can actually just lead to it just taking over your life on that.
If you want to find out more about mukbang, head back to episode 183.
I was just thinking that.
January 2021. It's called Mukbang, Sexualizing Food and Competitive Eating. So if you want to hear all about all about that, then go to 183. Many episodes ago.
You get to see what I look like with that 10 kilos of extra body fat stuck on my cheeks as well.
Because you're doing mukbang, that's why.
Yeah, that was the problem.
MyFitnessPal era. But I think that's a really good point, Ed. And I think that the best, if we're going to, talk about what would be the best tracking method for someone, I'm sure we'll talk about it a little later on, but I think it's the one that provides the least food focus while still allowing you to get the result that you want, So I think that's going to be the ultimate if someone was to take at least like 2 sentences from this weird podcast.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think the thing is there's almost like this dial approach or kind of like levels approach where for every for every pro on one side, you get a con, or not even necessarily pros and cons, but you're just balancing up kind of like the freedom you have, but then also with potentially less accuracy. And so, I mean, even if you just look at it purely from like that side of things, the more freedom you get, the less accuracy you have. And so you got to find out just between those two variables where you want to sit. If you are that pro bodybuilder about to get on stage, accuracy is going to be like through the roof. That freedom is something of being like through the floor is just something that you're just going to have to kind of like just accept. But on the flip side, if you want maximum flexibility, then you're going to have to accept that actually your accuracy is going to be relatively low. And there's no right or wrong in there. And then there's also, they're not the only two variables. You've obviously, like I said, like the amount of focus you got on food, how you want to implement these things, how often do you want to be going out for meals, how much is food, how much of your life and just kind of enjoyment of life comes from food. Now, I think that's also like another topic, because I think there's definitely, that can potentially be an issue if it is too much of if too much of your enjoyment, or basically if a high percentage of your enjoyment from life comes from food, then potentially, that might be something to look into. But those are all kind of different variables that you basically just need to pull up and down. And it's a bit like what we talk about when we're talking about what's your shape for life. We talk about feeling good, looking good, and performing well. Well, if you crank one variable up to the top, so you look as good as possible, let's say that shoot condition, how you feel is probably going to be pretty low, how you perform is pretty low. You'd have to, over your investment phase, juggle those three to find what combination is going to be best for you at that time. Exactly the same with this kind of thing. How much flexibility do you want? How much focus do you want on it? How much accuracy do you want? And then once you've found the right balance for you right there and then, that's the approach you need to go to. But that's, again, not just how you're going to do it for life. You may find as your educational skills improves over time, you're able to have the same level of accuracy or similar level of accuracy with more flexibility, or whatever from there. Likewise, your goals might change.
Or less food focus.
Priorities change. Yeah, less food focus. So it's kind of a moving target, but it's making sure that you've just got those dials, those variables in the best combination for you.
I think when if I think back to that MyFitnessPal days, the thing I did after that is I was told by someone, I think you should try no tracking. So then I went through this period of just not tracking anything, and I was doing everything by eyeball. And that was also a disaster. And what I learned looking back, and even just like periods, like if I look back on my last year where I've like held the leanest I've held, but the least amount of tracking, is I think it just comes back to like sorting your life out most of the time. When it comes to that, the ability to try all these different levels and have success with all of them and not have to be attached to any of them, is the more like the better relationship with food you have, which is usually linked to relationship with yourself, the easier it is to move through these levels, and the easier it is to sort of not be attached to any of them. Like when I'm at home, I'm sort of tracking everything, but that's because I eat the same thing most days. I don't use a calculator, but I eat pretty much the same thing. But then if I go away for a few weeks, I don't really track anything. And yet my body weight sort of stays steady, but I use the same sort of habits as I have when I'm at home. So I'll eat similar-ish breakfast. I'll look for restaurants that give me similar-ish lunches, and dinner will I'll just follow basic just principles. And I think that's the key thing for those who want to get to that next level is firstly start breaking away from that all or nothing mindset, which usually comes from that self-work or just understanding why you have all these attachments to food in the first place. And I think when you break away from that, then all of these levels are fine to try, and there's no pros or cons either.
Yeah, I think the mental side of it you said is massive, because until you are able to socialize and not give into peer pressure, not move away from your guidelines or whatever method you have when you feel more emotional, you're not using food as this kind of plug for a void in your life, then these things can work. But as long as that's the case, you're always going to just be waiting for the next slip up almost. And you might be able to implement no tracking for a few days, then your boss has a go at your work, bam, it all goes out the window. Now you can say that's also the same for if you're tracking, but at least when you're tracking, there's a bit more, you've got a structure that you need to stick to, where I think when it's just completely untracked, it's very easy just to justify things and let things slip a little bit more, because there isn't the rules aren't quite so firm. But I think on that, with the intuitive approach, having some level of guidelines, rules, templates, whatever you want to call it, is going to be essential for most people. And this is why I think like the true definition of intuitive eating, I don't think really exists with people who are also actually like, control is probably not the right word, but who are also trying to progress physically or like look after their health. You know, like if you look at maybe the average person, I'm not even really convinced they're truly intuitive eating, because we've got all this education we've picked up from media and whatever. Like people are, you know, thinking about things when they eat a lot of the time, but unless you're literally just eating as you feel, which I think in the world we live in with like the way the food environment's set up, you know, you're fighting a losing battle. You know, there's all this kind of advertising and like the way, if you purely go on just emotion the whole time, I think you are just going to end up eating crap the whole time, basically, or at least a large majority of it. And so I think really to eat untracked, you're never going to be fully intuitive. There is going to have to be like some level of structure in there. And that could be very minimal. Like Akash said, it could just be, I know I just need to eat this many meals a day. I know each meal I need to have some protein. Like that, it could be as minimal as that. But I think purely just having like no shackles on it at all, just going out and eating as you feel as you go, is a surefire way just to gain probably a lot of body fat and potentially like lose some muscle mass along the way.
And also, when we intuitively eat, we're also intuitively eating through a lens of like almost like a nutritional database in our head. We can look at food and be like, all right, there's protein there. There's about 30 grams protein in that.
Exactly.
That's about 1,000 calories. Like there's a pre-built thing in there. I think was it Lyle McDonald when we had him on the podcast? He was talking about this exact thing around.
Yeah. Once you track, you can never not track.
Yeah, you know? Once
you become this human calculator. You look at a chicken breast, you're like, I know how much protein's in that.
And one of the reasons why I say it takes a while to develop a lifestyle solution is because you have to almost rewire the way you think about food to not to become some obsessive calculator, but it's just things like you don't eat meals without protein. So when I went to Mexico last November, remember when I told you guys that I'm not going to track anything, or I'm not going to use my body weight as a measure either, because I think that's another way that can keep you level, where you don't track your food, but you're tracking your body weight, and that keeps you in track. But I thought, let me try not tracking either. But when I was there, it's not like I was just thinking, all right, screw it, I'll wake up, have donuts and all these things. I was like, I had these things in my head where, Ed, you mentioned like having a structure. My structure was 3 main meals, each had protein in it. And, you know, I would go to restaurants which gave me protein in those meals. So just having that as a baseline was the structure that I'd operated from. But I wasn't waking up having donuts, having dessert at lunch, having dessert at breakfast and dinner, because then you're just going to gain body fat and lose your muscle. But having some sort of structure that you live by, and that just makes you feel good, allows you to quote unquote intuitively eat, and the flexibility that really that's all we're after, right?
Yeah, I just don't know how people are pushing this. Don't track your food; it's going to cause eating disorders. But they're also promoting intuitive eating. And when I did research on intuitive eating, and I did a presentation for all our members at RNT. So, but one of the key points for intuitive eating was eating for physical rather than emotional reasons. So doing intuitive eating properly, isn't just listening to your emotions about, well, I feel like this, so I'm going to have it because I'm intuitive eating. That's not intuitive eating at all. But I don't think you can graduate to intuitive eating unless you've had this education behind you for a really long period of time. So again, I think, as I said earlier, like learning how to intuitively eat without tracking or without doing anything or learning anything about food, unless you're chatting, she's a unicorn. It's just physically impossible for most people, especially if their goal is to maintain a healthy, lean physique for life. And when you look at the research on intuitive eating, it's an approach that is okay at just holding someone at maintenance. At maintenance, it's not a good strategy if your goals are to, change your physique in any meaningful way. It just isn't. Unless you've done it for like 10 years like yourself, AV, you could probably get in really good nick by just intuitive eating now, but only because you've had all those years of tracking behind you.
I think the problem I'd have is probably under eating. I probably eat too much. And I think it'd be hard though to get really lean without
Alberto Nunez did it for his last bodybuilding season.
No scales as well. Yeah. As in no weighing scales.
He was doing body weight.
Tracked body weight.
Yeah, he was doing body weight, I think, but I'm not sure if he did it at the very end, but I don't think he did for at least 90% of it. No tracking food, which is impressive.
So no weighing scales for the food. So he was using cups and stuff like that. I thought that's all.
Yeah, just eyeballing it.
Well, just not even that. Eyeballing, And just using body weight, using his body weight. Yeah.
Something just to like is important.
Maybe that's the next challenge.
It's a caveat on that though, as well as like Akash stuff is like, it's physically possible to get there, but like how much do you want to put into the process of getting there? Like you can get to grade 8 on piano, but like how much are you willing to put into like getting all the way there?
Do you want to learn calculus?
Yeah, like the example of the bodybuilder we just said, I think he's about 40 now, and I'm pretty sure he's been into bodybuilding since his mid-teens. He's a competitive bodybuilder, he's a coach, like his life is bodybuilding. Like same way, like although not as extreme, like let's say Akash is like, you've been really into the health and fitness body composition stuff for what, probably over 15 years now, maybe getting on towards 20 potentially. And you've been experimenting.
I'm not that old.
Well, I don't know. I mean, what? Maybe early teens. You start going gym.
15 years. Yeah. Actually, to be honest, yeah, you're right. 32 now.
Yeah, when you start thinking like maybe when you start doing push-ups in your room or something, like it's scary. After 20 years of training, I thought I'd be in better nick than this, to be fair. But that's a story for another day. But when you think of how long like you've actually just had it as like a really high priority in your life, like we haven't done it as streamlined as possible. Like sometimes I see clients and I'm just like, man, you guys have achieved in terms of like either relationship with food or ability to like go and track things so like
much quicker
in a year, potentially what took me a decade, because I just went down so many wrong roads and was just silly about it and things. Well, I guess just not knowing at the time, but you have to go through, even if you do it streamlined as possible, it's still a process. And so it's like, how much do you then want to put in to get into that point? Because to get to that point, there will be times when you probably go untracked and go a bit too loose, then you might have to do another little diet again to get back into it, or you go untracked and you're actually restricting calories a bit too much. You find actually I'm not making as much progress in the gym as I wanted, or whatever it is. Like there's these learning points, and until you're like simmering on that like that level that you want, you're probably going to go above and below it a few times in getting there. And it's just, do you want to do that? And that's why I actually question a lot what is actually the aim when people do want to go away from tracking nutrition. And that's not because I think everyone should track everything all the time. I definitely don't. But most people don't want to track everything all the time. But I think the thought of intuitive eating is just like the go-to, is like, oh yeah, that's what I want to do. But when you actually put it into your life practically, like, is that what you actually want? I think it's worth thinking about, because for me, it would be an absolute nightmare, because it would just actually add on so much more stress and time throughout my week. And I think it's going to be the same for a lot of members, not exactly in the same way, but if you're really busy Monday to Friday with work, you're also, potentially traveling, potentially got a family, you're also trying to fit in your training, your cardio, getting out for walks. Like, do you want to add in more decisions around nutrition? Like, I think a lot of people actually find it, although they might not like the first meal plan that they ever create or anything like this, and it will take some trial and error, the automation during busy periods can actually be really liberating and really helpful. And that's where I think actually like a blended approach, probably something we'll get onto a bit more in a minute, is probably going to be way more appropriate. And it's not to say that no one should track everything and no one should do no tracking, but I think most people, when they think, oh, I want to move away from tracking or I want to become intuitive, they actually want somewhere in the middle, so they can be streamlined when they're busy. But then when they want to be able to move away from tracking, whether it's just an event, just like evening meals, weekends, these kind of things, then they can have that in the toolbox to use as well.
I mean, that's literally how I approach it. Yeah. And that's how I approach it as well. So like 80% is automated.
Yeah.
If I'm at home, it's the same thing every day. I don't have any issues. If Chani fancies making something different, I'll be like, yeah, cool. But if it's up to my own devices, I'll just eat the same thing. And then if I'm out, just eat whatever's there. That's the way I've approached it. And I think you're probably similar, Ed.
Exactly the same, yeah.
Ivan, what would you say you are?
Literally the same. I track when I'm at home, when I know, like, and then whenever I go out, I'm like, cool, just make a choice that's suited to my goals. Like, I don't put any thought into any additional thought. I don't even look at menus anymore. So you probably have to double order. You probably have to double order, don't you? Yeah, or I'm just like, cool, let's just go out, catch up, whatever. Like, it's just not a thing. And yeah, again, that if I can't track something, it's not the end of the world. It's not disaster. It's just like, it is what it is. Who cares? Get on with your day. Like, yeah, I'm the exact same boat. And I think that blended approach, I think, is going to work well. Do you know what's funny though? What Ed was saying earlier, he was talking about freedom and flexibility. Initially, people think that having a meal plan removes a lot of the flexibility and freedom. But what eventually ends up happening, they go full circle and they're like, actually, the set meal plan gives me so much flexibility and freedom with everything else that I do, because I don't have to think about it. And I think everyone eventually falls back into that sort of camp. Do you know what's funny? The evolution of someone who's, you see the one meal plan in week 1, then in week 5, they got like 10 meal plans. And then in like week 20, 24, 30, it's like back down to 2. You have learnt, young one. Yeah.
Yeah, week 100 is back to 1.
Exactly, just one the whole time.
And ultimately, you want your meal plan it will take some trial and error. And I think using the period after you get in shape is a great time to do this. But you want your meals to taste good. You want them to make you feel good. Like you don't have any bloat or gas or anything like that. And you want them to be easy to make. I think that's another key part of it. Like you want them to be super quick, 5 minutes prep, nothing too complicated. And I think that combination is the ultimate trio for people trying to build their lifestyle solution, especially for breakfast and lunch. Dinner, if you want to spend a bit more time, that's fine if you've got the time. But I think it's got to be easy to eat, taste good, easy to make, taste good, and feel good on your stomach. If you can do that, then you'll probably limit the choices as a default.
Yeah. I think what Ed said earlier is the biggest issue is where people's sole happiness comes from food. And that is a problem that you need to fix. Otherwise, all the stuff that we're talking about today just is going to be irrelevant.
I mean, if you are a foodie,
you have to expand your happiness portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, if you are a quote unquote foodie and you enjoy cooking and doing all that stuff, then
great.
Then go for it and save it for the evenings or the weekends. I wouldn't suggest doing it every single meal because you're probably just gonna just waste a lot of time.
I think on that though, it's worth defining like what a foodie actually is, like without going on too bit of a tangent. Like if you love the process of cooking, you love researching like new recipe, actually going through the motions of the prepping. I mean, potentially you could just eat it yourself, but I would have thought most of the time if you're really into cooking, you then enjoy sharing it with like loved ones and getting them to taste it. That's like a full experience. And although the food is a big component of it, it's not stuff in your face without even actually tasting the food doesn't feature in there. I think so often you hear people especially when they join, sometimes they even put it in their bios, I'm either all or nothing person and I'm a massive foodie. When you actually start getting to know them a little bit, hearing about more of like how they actually habits and things, like if they go off for their nutrition, they haven't just done the process that I just said. They've got a bargain bucket from KFC and just like inhaled it, or they've smashed a tub of ice cream because they were feeling a bit rough. Like, and look, we've all been there, so I'm not like there's no actually judgment on that, but like that isn't. I think if you're calling yourself a foodie when you're doing those things, you're kind of tricking yourself because actually you're using food for comfort, which, as I said, we've all been there at some point, but that's not at least what I would define as a foodie. It's a bit like saying I'm a football fan. Actually, I just go there just to fight. No, it's like you're a hooligan. You're not actually a football fan. It's the same kind of thing. It's like, all right, you can trick yourself if you think that. But I think that's like also just an important thing to note, like being a foodie and using food as comfort are not the same thing. And I think that's somewhere where people kind of just, if the biggest highlight of meeting up with your friends on the Saturday is, because you want to eat a triple stack burger and chips, whatever, like, I don't think that's been a food, like that's the food's the main priority and you just got some eating partners in that case. Or if, like the whole weekend is built around having this on-track meal or whatever it is, like the food just needs to accompany life. I think when that starts to switch around, which is said, like I've been there, that's when it starts to go downhill on that. Yeah,
and also like those who are into cooking and that sort of culinary experiences, the portions are usually quite small. It's actually it is all about taste. Chani went to one of the MasterChef finalists is a friend of Chani's cousins. So he was hosting a dinner last Thursday, like this 8-course dinner. And got to the end of it, and Chani texted me like, "I'm starving." Like it's like the food is amazing, but I'm so hungry still. Like it's just nothing. It just wasn't touching the sides because it's just like it's usually just like some small little courgette that's sliced in half with a bit like you know what it's like, right? So it's actually not a lot of food.
That's $100, please.
Yeah, it was that
for a cucumber with olive oil.
So it is about the food. Then it's very different.
Yep.
So what are the various tracking strategies that we can use? What are the hybrid approaches, the all-out approaches, and the different ones for different people?
I think for most people, the weekend warrior is going to be a pretty good starting point, which is having a set meal plan, I'll say Monday to Friday during like working hours and whatnot. So as we were talking about earlier, just having that plan that you enjoy, that tastes good enough, easy to prep. You don't have to think about it too much. You know exactly what you're eating Monday to Friday. Beautiful. And then weekend comes and having a bit more flexibility, I think can be very, very helpful for some people. I think having that weekend flexibility can allow for a bit more variety. It can also get you to maybe, if you are a foodie, you can start creating some meals and enjoy that with other friends and family and whatnot. And, factor that into totals for the weekend. Doesn't have to be super accurate, but it should still be tracked to some degree, right? But what that will do it will give you that set structure Monday to Friday, and then it will give you that flexibility sort of in sporadic moments. So on the weekend, most people like to have a bit more flex on the weekend because the structure is a bit different, right? So I think that can be a really, really good approach for people, especially if they are initially trying to move away from tracking so strictly. I think that can be a really, really good strategy for most. Then we also got the frequent flyer. The frequent flyer is the person who's like always on the go, who is always traveling. I know a lot of our members fit into that category. So for these individuals, what I recommend is, just tracking what you can. So like when you're at home, you still track, have your set meals, okay? So wherever you can practice accuracy and precision, you do so. And then when you're flying, when you're at airports these days, they have a lot of nutritional information on a lot of food. So there are always going to be really good options now, even when you're flying. You don't have to eat on the plane. There are many other options that you can work with, but it's a very similar premise. It's you're giving yourself a bit more flexibility when you're flying versus having this set plan that you feel you have to follow, right? So again, it simply goes back to that same principle of like, cool, when you're at home and everything is within your control, just track it, super easy. But when you're away, maybe give yourself some rules. Maybe tell yourself, okay, whenever I order out, I'm only going to go for like protein and veg for most meals, stuff like that. So then you can start creating a few rules that are going to allow you to live the lifestyle that you want and be at the body comp that you want. So again, this will all come down to what you want out of the journey, but that would usually be the frequent flyer. And then my favorite, which is what Akash is, and I think Ed is, and I think I would be to some degree as well, is the chameleon. Is just cool. When you're at home, when you can, you pretty much just follow a set meal plan. That's pretty much going to be the basis for all these ones. And then when you go away, when you go somewhere else, you simply just adapt to the scenario. That's what a chameleon does, right? It adapts to its environment. So if you're thrown out somewhere midweek, you have to go to some event that you don't really want to go to, but you're forced there, some 8-course dinner, you're like, oh, okay, it is what it is. I'm just going to adapt my situation to this and just get on with the rest of the week, get on with the rest of the day. So I think a chameleon is where most want to be working up towards, because I think that's just where you can that's the sweet spot, I believe, for most people. And that chameleon is going to look different to everyone, right? But it simply comes down to, you have a plan to follow for most days because it's easy for you. And then you're adaptable to whatever life throws at you in other scenarios. That's pretty much what sums up the chameleon.
Also, just on the frequent flyer, I know you mentioned that don't eat on the plane, but you'd be surprised like how decent the plane food actually is. The trick is to avoid the desserts, the bread baskets, the alcohol, it's all the extra stuff. The actual meal itself is actually quite low in calories because it's quite small. But the hard bit is making sure you're not snacking on the pretzels and it's all the other bits. It's important to have create rules. But I think that's changed a lot. I think travel used to be a big issue for eating healthy food or eating good food, whereas now on the plane, I mean, even as a vegan, you get tofu and rice, which I'm like shocked as. Like normally that wasn't the case a few years ago. As some airplanes now have tofu and rice, but most of the main meals are a protein source and a carb source. It's just all the other stuff. And then the other thing to mention, just to sort of like wrap this all up, give an overview, is a lot of this stuff should only be implemented once you lost the weight. We don't want to be doing any of these. You don't want to be implementing these untracking strategies on the way down. I think focus on just nailing the process and then getting in and getting out and then implementing this. And the reason why most of us will find this hard after losing weight is because you've got a new body, but you've got the bad habits still there. And half the battle is all going to be in breaking the bad habits and breaking all the associations. And that's why staying in shape is so hard, and why tracking less and less and less is so difficult, because you've just got to break so many associations, so many positive and negative perceived associations in order to avoid losing control.
Yeah, I think if you don't do that, so just to add on to that, is that you can remove all tracking strategies and then you end up just eating as you used to, where potentially, and that's the last thing you want to do. You didn't track before you went on this journey, but how you ate isn't the only way to eat not tracking. So the way you ate that put on all of the weight, spill a little rhyme, is not the only way you can do not tracking. So although you'll move from a tracked approach to potentially progressively less tracked over time, if that's your goal, the way you're going to do that is very different to how you ate before. And so there is still, as Akash said, like a massive like learning situation there, because it's not going back to how it was. And I think that's often where people can think, oh, I've hit checkpoint now, I want to move away from tracking. In their head, they just think, oh, when I'm out at that party, I can eat the cake, I can have all the beers, I can have burger on every day of the week, and whatever it is. But that's not going to be the case. You may not be tracking, but the way you're actually implementing that is going to be different, probably how you've ever eaten before.
And you want to go around the track multiple times. Like we know that the research is very clear. Every year you keep the weight off, your chance of keeping it off increases every single time. And the reason why it's that is because you need to go through the seasons. You need to go through the Christmas holidays, the positive stuff, like the promotions, the birthday parties, the celebrations, and then also the difficult stuff like loss or grief or emotional days, whatever it is. You need to go through that whole cycle, which shows itself over a year, over 2 years, over 3 years. When you've mastered all that and maintained control with your food and found your lifestyle solution, then you'll be able to keep the weight off for years and years and years and hopefully decades. Brilliant. And that's the blueprint from going from tracked to untracked, or wherever you wish to in the middle.